Houston. Thank you for joining us again for On the Money with Ryan Wheless and Matt Stevenson. I'm your host, Spike Spangle. Ryan, how are you doing this week?
We're doing great, man. Having a great time doing the show, helping the great folks of Houston calm their fears about all this crazy market volatility and inflation and just the shenanigans going on in the world.
Right. Matt Stevenson, how are you doing?
Doing fantastic, Spike. Thanks for having me.
It's your program. I am just glad to be here, guys. And we've been talking a lot about market volatility over the last few weeks, and I think one of the things that you really wanted to dive into today, Ryan, was what are the strategies that you actually implement? We talk about it on the radio program, your financial flight plan. Mm-hmm. This is what you do for your clients, all of the different elements. You've also been doing the portfolio X-ray for those who maybe haven't been a client, just to help them get safe. But we want to talk about the several different kinds of elements that you actually look at when you're putting together the financial flight plan today.
Well, we built the financial flight plan, folks, because, you know, it's no secret that Ryan's a pilot. We joke about that with me on the show all the time. And so the thing about it is
90 seconds. 90 seconds it took for him to mention a pilot.
So, you know, and I equate flying an airplane to retirement planning. What I mean by that is being a pilot is managing a risk for the flight. Being a financial advisor is managing risk in a client's retirement plan. So we build our retirement plans based around managing risk, and that's what it's all about. But we built the financial flight plan because over the years, Matt and I have had the pleasure of x-raying a lot of different financial plans, a lot of things out there from different competitors in town, big name box firms, smaller time firms, and it's shocking to me the amount of things that those plans are missing. Right? So Matt and I came up with the 6 elements that make up a good plan, and we built our system of planning around that.
Okay, the 6 elements. So obviously I'm going to want you to kick off with number 1. But putting together these plans and the limitations in our 401ks, I want to start there. What can somebody do? I mean, when I go someplace to work, those are the plan options that I have. Are you saying that maybe I should be also investing on the outside? Because I think that the general information, if you look on the internet, is max out your 401ks as much as you can.
Well, that's conventional financial wisdom hard at work, folks, and that stuff is outdated, all right? So the reality is this. What I would suggest you do is absolutely contribute to the company match. So whatever you have to put in to get 100% of whatever they give you back, it's free money. I mean, I'll take free money all day long. If you don't want your free money, I'll take it, okay? And so get your free money. But outside of that, think about this. Think about how the decision to put all of your money into a 401k plan could lead to having all your dollars in a taxable IRA account when you're 70 and 80 years old, 20 or 30 years out. It can have some major ramifications. And so what I would suggest that you do is move some money or max out your 401k, but then, or not max out your 401k, take the company match, and stop. Don't do any more than that. So set up a brokerage account outside of that 401k and start saving there too, so you have 2 buckets of money. You got a bucket inside the 401k plan, you got a bucket outside the 401k plan, and you can create some diversification there.
Right. Matt, I wanted to ask you a little bit more what he's talking about there. These tax-deferred accounts. We've been kind of socialized to do this over the last 20 or 30 years. We're not receiving pensions from large corporations anymore, maybe some of the really high up executives, but for most of the working Americans in the middle, pensions have really faded away. And we've been encouraged to use 401ks by not having to pay taxes in that current year, right?
Exactly.
But what is that doing to us down the road?
Yeah, Spike, and you know, the 401k, it's been around since the late 70s, early 80s, and you know, during that time frame, there's been a lot of success with the stock market. From the period from 1980 to the year 2000, the S&P returned about 1,000% over a 20-year period. So folks got used to stuffing as much money away as possible into those tax-deferred 401k plans. But I've got news for you folks. We have some of the lowest tax rates right now that we've ever had in our nation's history. And those tax-deferred 401ks, those IRAs, it's a ticking tax time bomb that we absolutely need to be able to address to get as much money out of Uncle Sam's hands and into yours for the next 30 years.
All right, well then let's start with number 1. What is the first thing on your list in putting together these 6 elements?
Without question, when you sit down and talk with a financial advisor, even if you're in your 401k, by the way, there's probably going to be some type of a risk tolerance assessment. Risk tolerance is what you think you can afford to lose. And guess what? When the market's going up, we're bulletproof, man. This is great, right? But when the market goes down, we find out what our risk tolerance really is, which a lot of us at home are experiencing right now. But see, that's risk tolerance. That's feeling, all right? That's feeling. Remember, we're a mathematical firm at Allied Wealth. And so to us, we have a look at another element, and we call that second element risk capacity. That is, how much could you afford to lose today and still be able to retire tomorrow if that's your plan to retire this year? Or more importantly, if you're already retired, how much could you lose in a down market and still maintain your standard of living, right? It's important to match your portfolio to that. And so one of the first things that we do is we look at your risk tolerance and your risk capacity and figure out what those numbers are. That's number one.
Yeah, and to that end, Ryan, I met with a couple that came in from the TV show a couple of weeks ago. They'd done really well. They'd built about a $2.5 million nest egg over 35 years of working. Just retired last year, started working with an advisor that they had a lot of chemistry with, but they wanted a second opinion given all this volatility that we're seeing. And when I sat down to build their comprehensive plan, they were shocked at what we found. Their portfolio, on several occasions, that mix lost about half its value on 2 separate occasions in the past. And they were set to see that perhaps again, given all this market volatility that we're seeing. And so they started to rethink, their current position and that relationship with their advisor, because it's all about consistency to get that reliable income stream in retirement.
Right. So what we're doing on today's program is we're continuing to talk about what is known as the financial flight plan at your firm. But I really wanted to give you some time on it. If you will explain exactly what that is to the viewers out there and why it's so important to have in these kind of economic times.
We talked about the first element being looking at risk capacity versus risk tolerance. The second element is going to be an investment plan that includes a portfolio x-ray, by the way, to build a portfolio designed to match your risk capacity so that when a situation like 2022 comes around, the market falls 20%, you don't lose that much and you don't have to worry about giving up your standard of living in retirement. The next thing we want to do is build for you an income and spending plan that allows you to go out into the world and spend money with confidence in your golden years, regardless of what happens with the stock market, with interest rates, with the economy, with inflation. And to that end, the most important part to me, by the way, Spike, is the tax plan portion. I believe taxes are going to be your biggest expense in retirement because we don't know where they're going to go. And a lot of us have the majority of our dollars inside of taxable IRA accounts. Next, you need a health care plan. Health care, to me, is your second largest expense after taxes. And the last thing you need to do is have a good legacy plan. Now, a legacy plan can have a lot to do with taxes as well. We'll get into that here in a few minutes. But folks, to get the financial flight plan, to find out if it's for you, is super easy. Just call the number on the screen. It's 844-944-7555. Again, 844-944-7555. You can click the QR code on the screen as well, and we will take your situation, what you have going on, evaluate what you're currently doing, and show you what it would look like to have a financial flight plan in place of what you're currently doing, and see if we can put you in a better situation. And again, to get the flight plan, call the number on the screen, 844-944-7555. Click the QR code to register there as well.
Matt, Ryan, we've got to take a very short break. Please call for your own complimentary financial flight plan that's going to take a look at all of the elements that Ryan was just listing through, including risks, your taxes, estate planning, a health care plan, most importantly, making sure that you've got a risk tolerance that matches your goals and objectives. You've got to take advantage of it with the kind of markets that are happening right now. Please call the number you see right here, 844-944-7555. More of the financial flight plan elements when we get back right after this.
How confident are you in your current financial plan? Do you know with certainty how the recent market volatility will affect your future hopes and dreams? How much are you paying in taxes? And how much are you losing to unnecessary high fees? You didn't work to save this money so that you could spend your time worried in retirement. Now is the time to take charge of your finances so you can feel confident about your future. Call in during the next 30 minutes of today's show only to set up an absolutely complimentary, no obligation, full-blown financial review that will result in your own customized written plan that we're giving away complimentary to the first 10 people who respond. We'll start with a full-blown analysis of what you already have by running a report to untangle how much you are currently paying in fees, how you're allocated for risk, and what it's costing to work with your current advisor. Next, we'll identify your goals. Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? Where do you want to go? And who do you hope to go there with? Is your current financial plan set up to get you there without mishap? Let's design a roadmap to create a financial plan you can follow with confidence. Get the piece that so many people are missing from their retirement. Find out how having a written plan can make a difference to your retirement dreams. Call now to schedule your complimentary, no-obligation, full-blown financial review today.
Welcome back to On the Money with Ryan Wheless and Matt Stevenson. I'm your host, Spike Spangle. We're talking about the financial flight plan that the crew puts together at Allied Wealth right here in Houston. You have offices all around the Houston area. By the way, I keep forgetting, do you have, you got like a little radio program or something, I understand?
Yeah, we're on KTRH at 12 or to 1 o'clock on Sunday afternoon.
Yeah,
Hour-long show. And Spike is our host on that show, folks.
I was wondering why.
I mean, he's there.
It was on my promo sheet to talk about radio. I couldn't remember why.
Well, I mean, we go through a lot of media outlets, Spike, because we feel that, you know, if you put enough good out into the world and help educate people about these things, it really, in some circles, it's taboo to talk about money and investments, right?
Absolutely.
It really is.
Absolutely.
So we want to open up that channel to people so they can get properly educated and not be in a situation to where they're concerned about their financial security, concerned about their peace of mind, or not being able to retire at all.
Right, right. Well, and because of that, because of all the education that you guys like to do at Allied Wealth, we're talking about your financial flight plan. It's a financial flight plan to get you to and through your retirement, all the kinds of checklists. You look at an extensive amount of material. It's not just about investing. It's also about taxes and strategy. But Matt, I know one of the things you like to talk about is having a real written income strategy. Why does having a plan written down on a piece of paper or printed out make a difference on how I'm able to be and stay retired?
Yeah, Spike, and you know, having a written plan in place for how you're going to draw on the nest egg and, you know, claim things like your pension or Social Security, it gives you that sense of confidence that you'll have that paycheck for the next 20 to 30 years and not run out of money. So as part of the income and spending plan, we're going to look at your non-discretionary expenses, food, water, shelter, clothing, the things that you absolutely need to maintain any quality of life in retirement. And we want to fund that source from, you know, guaranteed sources, whether it's your pension or Social Security. Maybe there's some alternative out-of-the-market products that can provide that guaranteed income stream as long as you have breath in your body. You know, a big piece of that, of course, is Social Security.
Yeah.
And folks, there's any number of ways to claim. That's part of what we're going to look at inside that income strategy. But again, the main goal there is to give that reliable and consistent income that you can't outlive.
And Matt, when you're doing an income strategy, of course, you've got to first figure out how much our monthly expenses might be. But there are then other factors. There's inflation that goes up over time. How long are we going to live? How long are both spouses possibly going to be around? Or you put together, of course, plans for single people or for someone who might be widowed as well. There's a lot of different factors. So what do? Are you using in-house software to help you with these projections? There's obviously got to be some room for change over time.
Absolutely. So any plan that we build for our client, Spike, is living, breathing documents. So we need to be able to adapt things over time because life is going to change. You know, whether it's maybe getting a new job, you know, going into retirement, you know, moving across the country, all these different variables can pop up along the way that may be unexpected, but planning for those different scenarios is essential to having that confidence in retirement.
Right.
And we've got the latest and greatest technology to help us do that at Allied Wealth. That I can promise you, folks.
Yeah, so number 4 on it for me, I think, would have to be talking about taxes. And folks, don't change that channel. Taxes, I know, might not be your favorite subject, but it's really a place where we could take advantage of something.
I'm not going to bore you, folks. I can tell you right now, there's 2 things that you should be doing right now in with this current environment. Tech stocks, for instance, have been whacked. All right. So if you've got tech stocks in your IRA somewhere, consider converting that IRA and those tech stocks over to a Roth IRA. And the reason why you would do that is if you believe those tech stocks, which I believe several of them are very, very on sale right now, will be higher in the future, you can convert those tech stocks over to a Roth IRA. Yes, you're going to pay tax on the value that they're at today, all right? But if the stock was trading at
20, 30, 40% down right now.
If it was trading at 100, for example, and it went down to 30, what's down $70 a share, right? You convert that stock over to a Roth IRA in your IRA account, or your Roth IRA account, and if that stock goes back to 100, which a lot of these tech stocks will recover, folks, what will happen is that $70 gain is now yours forever, 100% tax-free. And if you pass it to the next generation, it goes to them tax-free. Now, folks, that's one thing you should do. Here's the other thing, folks. This one is probably the biggest overlooked thing and really a secret, if you will, in the financial planning world. When a surviving spouse is left behind, so statistically the husband dies first, when the wife is left behind, she has 1 year left to file a joint tax return. Joint tax rates are much, much more favorable for income than single filer tax rates. So when that spouse moves over to being a single filer, she has the same amount of income coming in minus a Social Security check, right? But her tax rates are going to go through the roof. That's going to create a situation where the Social Security check she has left over, she's going to pay more tax on that. She could be in a situation where she's got Medicare surcharges, and there's all kind of things that could occur. So, folks, to combat that, that's the problem. Here's the solution. The solution is probably one of the most important things you can be doing right now because, as Matt said a minute ago, tax rates are on sale. They're as low as they've ever been. So a good Roth IRA conversion strategy as part of a tax plan in your portfolio is super important. But what we see so often is the Roth IRA conversion strategy is overlooked. Matt and I have worked with people. A guy comes in and he is 67 years of age. He's got a $4 million IRA.
Oh,
had a 401k at work, had a pension at work, rolled all that into an IRA account, okay? So he's 67, all right? They only spend about $90,000 a year with Social Security, Spike. All right, but guess what happens? When he turns 72, he is forced to start taking distributions out of those accounts that are going to be way more than his income need, and he's going to be having to pay all these taxes. Had he got with us sooner and started a tax plan at age 60, we could have been doing Roth IRA conversions from age 60 all the way up to 72 and greatly reduce the amount of taxes he's going to pay on his IRA over the long term. But guess what? This gentleman has some very, very well-doing children, all right? Put them both through school. Both the children are making in excess of $200,000. All right, so let's say that him and his wife die, and that 401k grows over time to maybe $5 million. All right, well, those kids are making good money, and guess what happens to them? Under the New Secure Act, they are forced to liquidate that 401k over a 10-year period. So think about that. If he leaves $5 million behind, okay, 10% of that's $500,000, right? Each kid's making $200,000. You dump $250,000 on top of their income. That takes them up to $450,000 to the 37% tax rate.
Thanks, Mom and Dad.
Thanks, Mom and Dad. But more importantly, the thing is Mom and Dad never intended for that much of their money to go to Uncle Sam anyway. So the tax planning piece of any plan is one of the most overlooked things when it comes to the plans Matt and I have evaluated on X-Rate over the years.
And why people have to take action right now is what I've learned from you guys is that we are in the lowest tax rates most likely of our lifetime.
No question
about it. And where do we think they're going to go in 1 or 2 or 3 years when they turn 72 or when they pass away and leave this over to their kids? Their kids are going to be hit with even higher tax brackets. So with the tax planning strategy and doing the financial flight plan, no matter what your age is, you want folks to call in and get their financial flight plan.
Absolutely, folks. And to call in to get the financial flight plan, just call the number on the screen. It's 844-944-7555. Again, 844-944-7555. We don't charge for this, folks. Matt and I engage with you because in that financial planning flight plan process, what we're wanting to do is just get to know you. Right? Let's find out if we're compatible to work with each other, and more importantly, find out if we can add value to your relationship. And we rarely come across a relationship we can't help people better out or help people from where they are to go to a better place. So to get that plan, it's 844-944-7555. You can use the QR code on the screen as well, but give us a shout. We'd be glad to help you out.
Legacy and estate planning, when we get back, included inside the financial flight plan. Make sure you call and get your own complimentary financial flight plan review right here at 844-944-7555. More On the Money with Ryan Wheless and Matt Stevenson when we get back after this.
As a good saver, you've been putting away money during your working years. Studies find that the biggest fear of retirees is running out of money. Market volatility isn't just the downward movement of stock prices, it's the size and frequency of change. The more dramatic the ups and downs, the higher the volatility. This can put savers who are newly retired or a few years away from being retired at greater risk. Today's generation of retirees is not receiving traditional pensions as our parents or grandparents did. Instead, we have retirement accounts such as 401ks or 403bs. These accounts typically expose your money to market risk. The last thing you want right before retirement is to lose a portion of the money you need for income. But how do you turn these accounts into a retirement income? Is it safe to keep all your retirement money sitting in the stock market? The last thing you want is to lose a portion of the money you need for income due to market loss. By working with a financial professional, you can learn how to turn a portion of your savings into an income stream for life and income for the life of your spouse if you're married. We all have moments in our lives when we wish we had taken action sooner. Don't let procrastination reign on your retirement parade. Act now before it's too late. Please call our office to set up your no-cost, no-obligation retirement income review today.
Welcome back to On the Money with Ryan Wheless and Matt Stevenson. I'm your host, Spike Spangler. We're talking about the financial flight plan, the elements that are within it, and why it is so important today to make sure that you actually have a written strategy for your retirement. Matt, I wanted to ask you a little bit about the health care element.
Yeah.
There's some folks who might like to be able to retire early, and we got to figure out that health care gap. This also might include long-term care needs and everything down the road. I know you're not a doctor. I know you're very smart at financial planning, but how do you take into account the health care needs in the financial plan?
Yeah, and this is so often overlooked, Spike, for the folks that may want to and have the ability to retire early. To give you an example, we had a couple that came in just a couple of weeks ago. The gentleman was 60, his wife was 55. They'd done quite well. They'd built about $1 million in his 401k, saved about $250,000 in those after-tax accounts. To position for tax efficiency. But one of the things I hadn't thought much about is those additional health care costs to bridge the gap until they turn 65 when they can go on Medicare. Now, they've got 18 months if he does retire early to go on COBRA, but after that, we've got quite, the shoes to fill as far as those additional costs. So we calculated that for the first 5 years, he may need to spend an extra $15,000 to $18,000 a year on top of their baseline living expenses, and then another 5 years, because the wife is much younger, to bridge another $9,000 to have that gap filled. So making sure that we have a plan to cover those health care costs is essential.
And, to that end, folks, if people come to us often and they want to see if they can retire early, and we want to help you retire early. You've earned the right to, and that's pretty awesome to be able to do that. But the first thing I want to ask you is not about your money. It's about health care. What are you going to do to cover health care? And so Matt mentioned going on the COBRA for 18 months, certainly an option. You can also go look at the ACA exchange, the healthcare exchange, go there. Sometimes you can even qualify for a subsidy, by the way, and have some of your costs taken care of. If you have the right income strategy, and we will help you develop that as part of the financial flight plan. So a lot of things come into play when it comes to healthcare. But Spike, you mentioned an important one, which kind of leads into the next element too, which is legacy and estate, is what about long-term care? Right?
Yeah,
folks,
I'm big on long-term
care. Here's what happens. You buy a long-term care insurance policy, you have it for a number of years, and all of a sudden, when you get around 60, 62 years of age, you get this letter from the insurance company that says, hey, guess what? We're changing the rules on you. We're going to allow you to have the same amount of coverage you have today. We're going to increase your premiums, or you can pay what you're currently paying and have reduced coverage, right? That's what happens a lot of time, okay?
Yeah.
So there's other ways to get long-term care health insurance, by the way, without paying any premiums. And as part of the financial flight plan, we will show you how to do those things, okay? There's a lot of strategies out there that you may not even know about that are super important to learn about because it can help you add value tremendously.
And why I think you're saying that it's so important as far as estate and legacy planning is because if one of you needs to go into long-term care, you're going to be eroding away. What are the average costs of a long-term care facility here in Houston?
$70,000 a year in the state of Texas.
Right. So how quickly, a year, 2, 3 years, we're going to be really eating
the old saying is either you're going to walk out the front door or be wheeled out the back door, but within 3 years in most cases you're going to be out of there. And 3 years is actually kind of skewed higher because of Alzheimer's patients. It's usually about 2 years on average.
Yeah.
But it's 140 grand. So if you think about that for a second, folks, some of us can afford to self-insure, right? Some of us can't. And some of us are paying for long-term care insurance and don't need it. So make sure as part of your overall comprehensive financial plan, you're looking at that healthcare strategy. Super important.
And I think it's really important for those families that are in between, a couple that might have 700,000. 800,000, maybe $1 million in savings, going, you know what, if we stretch this out over 30 years, we account for inflation, we should be okay. But if something goes wrong in the financial plan and one of you goes into long-term care, you're actually nosediving the financial plan for both of you. So when you're a little bit tighter like that, I think it's worth taking a look at that extra expenditure on long-term care.
Absolutely. But make sure you're doing it in a manner where the game can't get changed on you. And there's a lot of ways to do that, folks, and we can help you do it. The last thing, Spike, we got to touch on is super important, is legacy, folks. Yes. I can't tell you the number of times I see people take the time to do a trust and wills, all right? And they have the best intentions in the world, okay? So what happens, though, is they don't take time to update the beneficiaries at the various custodians and banks and other places their assets are held to reflect the trust being the beneficiary to those assets and those accounts. And folks, if you have a trust and your beneficiary designation in your bank account says something different than the trust, guess what? The trust doesn't mean anything. Because what's on the beneficiary designation form at that custodian or institution is where the money goes. And I can't tell you the number of times I've seen people pay an estate planning attorney, you know, $2, $3, $4, I've even seen $10,000 of estate planning work done, but none of the assets are properly retitled the name of the trust, or they're not left to the trust in the appropriate manner. So if that's you, make sure you're doing that step the right way. And folks, one last thing on estate planning and the legacy part. If you leave an unplanned estate, there is a strong chance that your kids are going to get upset with each other. Somebody wanted grandpa's watch or grandma's china or grandpa's old gun or whatever, and if they don't get what they think they deserve, it's going to tear your family unit apart. And we don't want that, folks. So we do a lot of these things as far as the financial flight plan. We're going to discover your risk capacity and risk tolerance, build for you an investment plan, an income plan, a tax plan, a health care plan, and lastly, a legacy plan. That's all part of the financial flight plan. To get it, all you got to do is call us, 844-944-7555. We don't charge a dime for this, folks. It's complimentary on us. Call us today, 844-944-7555. Click the QR code on the screen, but act now.
Ryan, Matt, thank you guys so much for taking us through the financial flight plan today. We're taking a look at investments, taxes, estate planning, your healthcare plan. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for watching On the Money with Ryan Wheless and Matt Stevenson. We're going to be back again next week.